I discovered my fiancé was cheating on me with my twin sister through a pregnancy test that wasn't mine. What I did next destroyed both their lives in ways they never saw coming. My name is Charlotte, and I'm 29 years old, living in Phoenix, Arizona. 3 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I was planning my wedding to Marcus, the man I'd been with for 6 years, and my identical twin sister Emma was my maid of honor. We were supposed to be this perfect little family unit, the kind you see in those cheesy holiday movies where everyone's gathered around the Christmas tree looking impossibly happy. I should have known something was wrong when Emma started losing weight and Marcus started working late every single Thursday. But when you trust people completely, when you've built your entire life around the assumption that the two people you love most in the world would never hurt you, you make excuses for everything. Marcus and I met in college at Arizona State. He was this sweet engineering student who tutored me in calculus, and I was completely smitten with his shy smile and the way he'd get this little crease between his eyebrows when he was concentrating. Emma thought he was too boring for me at first, said I needed someone with more personality, more excitement. But over the years, she warmed up to him, and eventually they became close friends too. Maybe that should have been my first red flag. Emma and I have always been competitive, even though we're identical twins. Growing up in a small town outside Tucson, people constantly compared us. We looked exactly the same, but our personalities were completely different. I was the responsible one, the planner, the one who always did her homework on time and never missed curfew. Emma was the wild child, the one who snuck out at night and dated the bad boys and somehow always managed to charm her way out of trouble. After college, I got a job as a marketing coordinator at a healthcare company in Phoenix. Nothing glamorous, but steady, reliable work that paid well enough for Marcus and me to rent a nice 2-bedroom apartment in Tempe. Emma bounced around between jobs, bartending, doing some freelance photography, always talking about her big dreams but never quite following through on any of them. When Marcus proposed last Christmas, Emma was the first person I called. I was sitting in our kitchen, staring at this beautiful vintage ring he'd somehow managed to afford, and I was so excited I could barely dial her number. She screamed with joy, said she'd been waiting for this moment for years, and immediately started talking about planning the perfect wedding. "I'm going to be the best maid of honor ever," she promised. "This is going to be the most beautiful day of your life, Charlie." That's what she always called me, Charlie. No one else was allowed to use that nickname. The wedding was supposed to be on June 15th, 2024, at this gorgeous venue in Scottsdale that we'd booked a year in advance. Emma had been helping me with everything, from picking out flowers to addressing invitations. She'd come over every weekend, and the three of us would sit around our dining room table, surrounded by wedding magazines and color swatches and endless lists of things that needed to be done. Looking back, I realized those planning sessions gave her the perfect excuse to spend hours alone with Marcus while I was running errands or taking phone calls or dealing with vendors. But at the time, I thought it was sweet how well they got along, how invested she was in making sure everything was perfect for our big day. The first time I noticed something was off was in early March. I came home from work to find Emma and Marcus sitting on our couch, looking at something on his laptop. When they saw me, Emma immediately closed the screen and jumped up with this overly bright smile. "Hey, Charlie, we were just looking at honeymoon destinations for you guys." Marcus was showing me some photos of that resort in Costa Rica. But there was something in their body language, the way they were sitting just a little too close together, the way Marcus wouldn't quite meet my eyes. I felt this tiny flutter of unease in my stomach, but I pushed it down. These were the two people I trusted most in the world. I was being paranoid. The second red flag came 2 weeks later. I was doing laundry and found a receipt in Marcus's jeans pocket for dinner at Kai, this really expensive restaurant in Chandler. The receipt was dated for a Thursday night, and it showed charges for 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine, and dessert. When I asked him about it, he said he'd taken a potential client there to discuss a project. Must have been some client, I joked. You ordered the chocolate lava cake. She has a sweet tooth, he said without thinking, then quickly corrected himself. The client, I mean, she insisted we order dessert. He'd never mentioned the client was a woman. But again, I made excuses. Marcus was trying to build his consulting business, and taking clients to nice dinners was just part of the job. I was being possessive and suspicious for no reason. The Thursday night pattern continued for weeks. Every Thursday, Marcus would tell me he had to work late, wouldn't be home until 10 or 11 p.m. He'd come back smelling like cologne I didn't recognize, claiming he'd been at the office or meeting with clients. Emma, meanwhile, had also developed a mysterious Thursday night routine, saying she had a standing photography gig that kept her busy until late. I started paying closer attention to the little details. Emma had new clothes, expensive ones, including a beautiful leather jacket from Nordstrom that definitely wasn't in her usual budget. When I complimented her on it, she said she'd gotten it on clearance, but I'd checked the price tag when she wasn't looking. $400, no clearance stickers. Marcus had new habits too. He'd started going to the gym more often, had upgraded his wardrobe, was suddenly very concerned about his appearance in ways that seemed out of character. When we'd go out to dinner, he'd spend half the evening on his phone, texting someone he claimed was a work colleague. The breaking point came on April 18th, a Thursday night when everything finally fell apart. I'd been feeling sick all week, nauseous and exhausted, and I was starting to worry I might be pregnant. Marcus and I had talked about wanting kids after the wedding, but the timing would be complicated with all the wedding planning and his business just getting off the ground. I decided to stop by the drugstore on my way home from work and pick up a pregnancy test, just to rule it out. When I got home, our apartment was empty. Marcus had left a note saying he'd be working late again, and I figured Emma was doing her mysterious Thursday photography job. I went into our bathroom, opened the pregnancy test kit. And that's when I saw it. There was already a pregnancy test in our bathroom trash can. A positive pregnancy test. I stared at it for a long time, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The test was the same brand I just bought, but it definitely wasn't mine. I hadn't taken it yet, which meant someone else had been in our bathroom in our home taking a pregnancy test. My hands were shaking as I pulled it out of the trash and looked at it more closely. 2 bright pink lines, very clearly positive, and there was only one other woman who had regular access to our apartment who would feel comfortable enough to take a pregnancy test in our bathroom. Emma. My twin sister was pregnant, and for some reason, she'd taken the test at my house instead of her own apartment. I sat on the bathroom floor for maybe an hour, holding that test, trying to come up with any explanation that didn't involve the worst-case scenario. Maybe she was scared and didn't want to be alone when she found out. Maybe she was embarrassed about some one-night stand and needed a safe place to process the news. Maybe there was some perfectly innocent reason why my sister had been secretly pregnant and taking tests in my bathroom. But deep down, I already knew the truth. When Marcus came home at 10:30, I was sitting at our kitchen table with the pregnancy test in front of me. "Hey babe, how was your day?" he asked, then stopped when he saw what I was holding. His face went completely white. "Whose is this, Marcus?" What do you mean?" "I found this in our bathroom trash. It's not mine, so whose is it?" He stood there for the longest time, just staring at the test, and I could practically see him trying to come up with some explanation that wouldn't destroy everything. Finally, he sat down across from me and put his head in his hands. "Charlie, I can explain." "I'm listening." "It's Emma's." Even though I'd suspected it, hearing him say her name out loud felt like a physical blow. And why would Emma be taking a pregnancy test in our bathroom? Another long pause, because she didn't want to be alone when she found out. Found out what exactly? That she's pregnant. With whose baby, Marcus? He looked up at me then, and I saw tears in his eyes. Mine. The word hung in the air between us like a bomb that had just exploded. Mine. The baby was his, which meant they'd been sleeping together, which meant everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. How long? My voice sounded strange and distant, like it was coming from someone else. Charlie, please let me explain. How long have you been fucking my sister? He flinched at the harsh word, but I didn't care about his comfort anymore. 6 months, he whispered. 6 months. They'd been having an affair for 6 months, while I was planning our wedding, while I was dreaming about our future together, while I was trusting them both completely. Every Thursday night, they'd been together while I was at home alone, making excuses and covering for each other. Where? What? Where have you been meeting? Her place, hotels, here in our bed. Never here, he said quickly. We would never disrespect you like that. I almost laughed. You've been having an affair with my twin sister for 6 months, getting her pregnant while you're engaged to me, but you draw the line at our bed. How thoughtful of you. It wasn't supposed to happen, he said, and now he was crying. It just started as friendship, and then one night we were talking about the wedding and she was helping me plan this surprise for you, and we had a few drinks, and it just happened. We both felt terrible about it. But not terrible enough to stop. We tried to stop, so many times, but we couldn't stay away from each other. I stared at this man I'd been planning to marry, this man I'd been with for 6 years, and realized I didn't recognize him at all. The Marcus I knew was honest, loyal, incapable of this kind of deception. But apparently the Marcus I knew didn't exist. Does she love you? Charlie, please. Answer the question, does Emma love you? She says she does. And do you love her? A pause that lasted forever. Yes. That single word broke something inside me that I don't think will ever fully heal. Yes, he loved her. After 6 years together, after planning a life together, he loved my sister more than he loved me. I want you out, I said quietly. What? I want you out of this apartment. Tonight. Take whatever you need and get out. Charlie, we need to talk about this. We need to figure out what we're going to do about the baby, about the wedding, about everything. There is no wedding, and the baby is your problem now. You and Emma can figure it out together. He tried to argue, tried to plead with me to give him a chance to explain, to make things right somehow. But I was done listening. I went into our bedroom, locked the door, and stayed there until I heard him packing his things and leaving. Then I called Emma. Charlie, thank God, she said when she picked up. Marcus told me you found the test. I can explain everything. Can you explain how you've been lying to my face for 6 months? Can you explain how you've been screwing my fiancé while helping me plan our wedding? It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You're pregnant with Marcus's baby. Silence on the other end of the line. Emma. Yes, she whispered. I'm pregnant. And Marcus is the father. Yes. How could you do this to me? You're my sister, my twin sister. We shared a womb, Emma. We came into this world together. How could you betray me like this? I never meant for it to happen, she said, and she was crying now too. It just did. We tried to fight it, but we couldn't help ourselves. You could help yourselves. You chose not to. There's a difference. I know you hate me right now, but Charlie, you have to understand we're in love. Really in love. It's not just some fling or affair. We want to be together. Then be together, but leave me out of it. What about the wedding? What about it? Are you going to cancel it? I almost laughed again. Emma, he just told me he's in love with you and you're having his baby. Of course I'm canceling the wedding. But all the deposits, all the planning. I don't care about the money. I care about the fact that my sister and my fiancé have been lying to me for months. We were going to tell you after the wedding. We didn't want to ruin your special day. My special day? You mean the day I was supposed to marry the father of your child? How exactly were you planning to make that work? She didn't have an answer for that. I hung up and spent the next 3 days in bed, calling in sick to work, eating nothing but ice cream and crying until I didn't have any tears left. Then I got angry. Not just sad angry or disappointed angry. I got strategically, methodically, ice-cold angry. Emma and Marcus thought they could betray me and then just ride off into the sunset together with their perfect little love story and their baby. They thought I'd be devastated for a while, but eventually accept it. Maybe even come around to being the supportive sister and ex-fiancé who showed up to family events and pretended everything was fine. They were wrong. I started by doing research. I spent hours online, learning about the legal implications of canceling a wedding, about getting deposits back, about what happens to shared assets when an engagement ends. I made spreadsheets, organized documents, created a timeline of everything that had happened. Then I started collecting evidence. Marcus had moved in with Emma, which made things easier. He'd left some of his things at our apartment, including his laptop charger and a few important documents. When he came back to get them, I made copies of everything I could find. Bank statements showing the expensive dinners and gifts he'd been buying. Credit card bills with hotel charges I'd never known about. Text message screenshots I found on an old phone he'd forgotten to wipe clean. The most damaging evidence came from his email. Marcus had always been careless about logging out of his accounts, and he'd left his Gmail open on the computer he'd forgotten to take with him. I spent hours going through months of correspondence between him and Emma, documenting their relationship from the very beginning. The emails were devastating. They weren't just planning hookups. They were planning a future together. Emma had written long messages about how she'd always been jealous of my relationship with Marcus, how she'd felt like I didn't deserve him because I was too safe and boring. Marcus had responded with equally harsh assessments of our relationship, saying he felt trapped and that marrying me would be settling. But the worst email was one Emma had sent in February, right in the middle of our wedding planning. I can't wait until this ridiculous wedding is over and we can finally be together for real. Watching her plan this whole thing is hilarious, like she actually thinks you're going to go through with it. She has no idea what's coming. They'd been planning to humiliate me all along. The wedding was never real to them. It was just an elaborate joke they were playing at my expense. That's when I decided they deserved to experience a little humiliation themselves. I started with the practical stuff. Marcus had been listed as a co-signer on several of my accounts, including my car loan and one of my credit cards. I called the companies and had him removed from everything, which meant he was suddenly responsible for his own car payment and lost access to credit he'd been relying on. Emma had been borrowing money from me regularly over the past year, small amounts here and there that added up to about $3,000. I'd never asked her to pay it back because she was my sister and money had never mattered between us. But now it mattered. I sent her a formal demand for repayment, with documentation of every loan and a 30-day deadline. The wedding vendors were more complicated. We'd put deposits down on everything, venues and caterers and florists and photographers, most of it paid for with my credit cards or our joint savings account. I called every single vendor and explained that the wedding was canceled due to my fiancé having an affair with my maid of honor. Most of the vendors were sympathetic and worked with me to get partial refunds or transfer deposits to other dates. A few were less flexible, but I threatened to leave negative reviews detailing exactly why the wedding was canceled, and that usually motivated them to be more accommodating. The real satisfaction came from the public humiliation. Emma had been posting constantly on social media about the wedding preparations, sharing photos of dress fittings and flower arrangements and general excitement about being my maid of honor. Marcus had been more restrained, but he'd still posted occasional updates about wedding planning and how excited he was to marry me. I crafted a single Facebook post that tagged both of them and included the entire extended family and all our mutual friends. Hi everyone. I wanted to let you know that Marcus and I have decided to cancel our June 15th wedding. We discovered that Marcus and my maid of honor Emma are expecting a baby together, and they've been having an affair for the past 6 months. I wish them the best of luck with their new relationship and upcoming parenthood. Thank you to everyone who was planning to celebrate with us. I attached one of the email screenshots where Emma had called our wedding ridiculous, and Marcus had talked about feeling trapped. Then I hit post and turned off my phone. When I finally turned it back on the next morning, I had over 200 notifications. Comments, private messages, phone calls, texts. Our entire family and friend network had seen the post, and the responses ranged from shock to outrage to support for me. My mom called me crying, saying she couldn't believe Emma would do something like this. My dad was furious and said he was driving up from Tucson to have a conversation with both of them. Marcus's parents, who had always treated me like a daughter, sent me a long message apologizing for their son's behavior and saying they still considered me part of their family. The best response came from my cousin Sarah, who wrote, "Emma and Marcus deserve each other. They're both garbage humans and you're better off without them. Also, I'm keeping the bridesmaid dress because it's gorgeous and I'm going to wear it to their wedding just to mess with them." The social media post was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, the story spread through our entire social circle. Emma lost several photography clients who said they couldn't trust someone who would betray their own sister. Marcus's consulting business took a hit when word got around the professional network about what had happened. But the real consequences came from their own relationship. Apparently, being publicly exposed as cheaters and having to deal with the fallout from both families put a lot of strain on their perfect love affair. Emma called me in tears 3 weeks after my Facebook post, saying Marcus was being cold and distant, and she was worried he was having second thoughts about everything. "He keeps saying he never wanted things to happen this way," she sobbed. "He says he feels guilty about how we hurt you, and now he's questioning whether we did the right thing." "Sounds like a personal problem," I told her. "Charlie, please, I know you hate me, but I need your help. Can you talk to him? Can you tell him that you're okay with us being together?" I almost hung up on her. But then I realized this was an opportunity. "You want me to help save your relationship with my ex-fiancé? I know it's a lot to ask, but..." "It is a lot to ask. It's an insane thing to ask, but I'll consider it under one condition." "What?" "You pay me back the $3,000 you owe me, plus interest. $5,000 total. And you give me a written apology that I can share with whoever I want." $5,000. Charlie, I don't have that kind of money." "Then I guess you'll have to figure it out. Just like you figured out how to have an affair with my fiancé." She hung up on me. 2 days later, she called back and agreed to my terms. The written apology was everything I'd hoped for. Emma detailed the entire affair, took full responsibility for her actions, and acknowledged that she had betrayed my trust in the worst possible way. She admitted that she had always been jealous of my relationship with Muckas and that her actions were motivated by envy and selfishness. But the best part was what happened when she gave Muckas the apology to read before she sent it to me. According to Emma, Muckas was horrified by how detailed and honest the apology was. He said it made their relationship sound tawdry and calculated, and that he didn't want to be portrayed as someone who would steal his fiancé's sister. They had a huge fight about it. Emma accused Muckas of being ashamed of their relationship and not being willing to take responsibility for his choices. Muckas accused Emma of being dramatic and making the situation worse than it needed to be. The fight escalated over several days, and by the end of the week, Muckas had moved out of Emma's apartment and was staying with a friend. Emma called me again, even more hysterical than before. "He left me," she cried. "Muckas left me and I'm pregnant and I don't know what to do." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and I meant it. Despite everything she'd done, I didn't want her to be alone and pregnant. "Can you talk to him, please? I know you don't owe me anything, but Charlie, I'm scared. What if he doesn't come back? What if he decides he doesn't want the baby?" "Emma, I'm the last person who should be giving Muckas relationship advice." "But he'll listen to you. He always respected your opinion." That was the moment I realized Emma had never really understood Muckas at all. She thought he loved her, thought they had this deep connection, but she didn't recognize that his respect for me was based on qualities she'd never developed herself. Integrity, honesty, emotional stability. All the things she'd thrown away when she decided to have an affair with my fiancé. I didn't help her get Muckas back. Instead, I did something that surprised even me. I reached out to Muckas directly. We met for coffee at a neutral location, a Starbucks in downtown Phoenix that neither of us had any history with. He looked terrible, exhausted and stressed, and about 10 pounds thinner than when I'd last seen him. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," he said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I'm not here to get back together, if that's what you're hoping." "I know, I needed to apologize. Really apologize, not just the pathetic attempt I made that night you found the test." He talked for 20 minutes straight, detailing everything that had happened, how the affair had started, how guilty he'd felt, how he'd convinced himself that ending our engagement was the right thing to do because he'd fallen out of love with me. "But the thing is," he said finally, "I don't think I ever fell out of love with you. I think I just got caught up in the excitement of something new and forbidden, and I mistook that feeling for love." "Are you saying you made a mistake?" "I'm saying I destroyed the best relationship I've ever had for something that wasn't real. Emma and I don't actually work together. We don't want the same things. We don't share the same values. The only thing we had in common was the thrill of sneaking around behind your back. And now that you can't sneak around anymore, the thrill is gone." "Exactly." I looked at this man who had been the center of my world for 6 years, who I'd planned to spend my life with, and felt absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, no lingering love, just a kind of detached pity. "Muckas, I need you to understand something. Even if Emma wasn't in the picture, even if you came to me tomorrow and begged me to take you back, it wouldn't happen. You didn't just cheat on me. You made me question my own judgment, my own worth, my ability to trust my instincts about people. That kind of damage doesn't heal just because you're sorry." "I know. And you have a baby coming. Whether you love Emma or not, whether you want to be with her or not, you're going to be connected to her for the rest of your life. You need to figure out how to make that work." "What if I can't?" Then you'll be a deadbeat dad who abandoned his pregnant girlfriend after destroying his previous relationship. Is that really who you want to be? He didn't have an answer for that. I left him at that Starbucks and never saw him again in person, though I heard through mutual friends that he did eventually go back to Emma. They got married in a small ceremony at the courthouse when she was 8 months pregnant, with no family present except her parents and his reluctant best man. Their son was born in November, and from what I've heard, they're struggling. Mukaza's business never fully recovered from the reputation damage, and Emma's photography career essentially ended when word got around about what had happened. They're living in a tiny apartment, fighting constantly about money and responsibility, and whether they actually want to be together. Meanwhile, I've rebuilt my life completely. I used the money I got back from the wedding deposits to take a solo trip to Europe, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the courage to do alone. I spent 3 weeks traveling through Italy and France, eating incredible food and visiting museums, and having deep conversations with strangers who didn't know anything about my story. When I got back, I decided to make some major changes. I left my marketing job and started a consulting business, helping other women navigate the practical aspects of ending engagements and dealing with wedding vendor contracts. It turns out there's a real need for this kind of service, and I'm good at it because I understand exactly what it feels like to have your life implode and need help picking up the pieces. I also started dating again, though I'm much more careful about trust and much better at recognizing red flags. I'm seeing someone now, a divorced father of 2 who values honesty and communication above everything else. He knows my whole story, and instead of being intimidated by it, he says it shows him that I'm someone who won't tolerate being treated badly. Emma has tried to reconcile with me several times over the past year. She sent long letters, shown up at my apartment, enlisted our parents to mediate conversations. But I've been clear that our relationship is over. I don't hate her anymore, but I also don't trust her, and I don't see any point in pretending we can go back to being sisters. The hardest part has been losing the relationship I thought we had, the twin bond I believed was unbreakable. But I've realized that bond was probably one-sided for a long time. Emma saw me as competition, not as a sister, and that's not something I can fix or change. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled the situation, if I think I was too harsh in exposing them publicly and refusing to forgive Emma. But the truth is, I don't regret any of it. They made choices that hurt me deeply, and I made choices that held them accountable for those decisions. That seems fair to me. The experience taught me 3 crucial things about betrayal and recovery. First, trust your instincts when something feels wrong, even if you can't prove it yet. Those little red flags I ignored could have saved me months of pain if I'd paid attention to them. Second, don't protect people from the consequences of their own actions just because you love them. Emma and Marcus made choices that hurt people, and they needed to experience the full impact of those choices to understand what they'd done. And third, sometimes the best revenge is simply living well and refusing to let other people's bad behavior define your future. If you've been betrayed by someone you trusted, here are 3 practical steps you can take. Document everything you can before confronting anyone, because people will try to gaslight you and minimize what happened. Don't make major decisions while you're in the initial emotional shock phase. Give yourself time to think strategically. And remember that forgiveness is something you do for yourself, not something you owe to people who hurt you. If this story helped you feel less alone in dealing with betrayal, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about overcoming life's worst moments. Because sometimes the person who breaks your heart gives you exactly the motivation you need to build a better life.